What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire catalog from the first film they released all the way until whenever I get caught up. And this is a special episode of the A24 Archive because today I'm going to rank the first 60 films in A24's catalog. Just recently I reviewed The Ballad of Lefty Brown, which was the 60th film in A24's catalog I've watched. And as I said, when I hit 30, I'm gonna every 30 films review and kind of re-rank and reassess where these films fall in rankings for me. And once we start getting to the top, it becomes really difficult because there's a lot of movies that it could change on any given day. And I'm not gonna go in depth with every one of these movies because I've done full reviews on every single one, but I'm quickly just gonna say some stuff, especially when we're in the bottom of the list. I'm just gonna try to work my way up as quickly as possible, but just to give you guys kind of an idea as to where all of these movies have fallen, and maybe if you haven't seen some of my reviews for these movies that are full, you'll get an idea of the ones that I find that are worth your time comparatively to the ones that I just think aren't really worth watching. So let's jump into this right away because otherwise we may be here for a while. So first up, we'll go from 60 to number 55. These are the movies that I feel like are completely not worth your time. These are the bottom of the barrel A24 films that I just found awful, and that would be Revenge of the Green Dragons, Tusk, A Glimpse into the Mind of Charles Swan III, Barely Lethal, Mojave, and The Adderall Diaries. I found all these movies to be incredibly miserable. I did not enjoy my experience. I feel like they were poorly made, the performances were really bad, and there's just nothing that really makes these films worth watching. Next, we're going to get into the category that I would consider really badly made, but not necessarily unwatchable. These are movies that I personally would never watch again, but they weren't the most miserable watches in the entire world. And that would be Life After Beth, the Oasis Supersonic documentary, Free Fire, The Exception, and Wood Shook. These are all movies that I found to be really poorly made, that were uninteresting, that had a really hard time capturing my attention. I didn't find any of these really worth a revisit, and I probably wouldn't watch most of these movies again. The next category would be films that I found like there were good performances in, or that were interesting enough to hold my attention, but still ultimately fell short. These were movies, once again, I probably would not revisit, and that's going to be films 49 through 44. And these are movies I probably wouldn't watch again, but that would be The Bling Ring, Dark Places, The Sea of Trees, Cut Bank, Into the Forest, and The Ballad of Lefty Brown. These are all movies that, whether they had a really great performance or some decent cinematography, there was enough there that held my attention long enough that made the movie manageable, but there's still something wrong enough with it that I probably wouldn't go back and watch it again. And as I said before, you can watch my full thoughts on all these movies. Up next are going to be the average films. These are going to be the films that are kind of middle of the road to me. There's enough there that's like it's compelling and holding my attention, not necessarily as bad as the category as I saw before, ones that may not interest me in revisiting, but ones that were interesting enough to hold my attention, or that I had some positive things to say about them. And that's films number 43 through 38, and those films are Spring Breakers, Son of a Gun, Menage, Morris from America, American Honey, and The Disaster Artist. These are all movies that I found to be compelling in one way or the other for a brief moment, or they had really good performances, enough that I could hold my attention, but not necessarily films that I would be revisiting anytime soon. Then we have three movies that I feel like fall above that category just a little bit, that might just be a little bit better, that held my attention a little bit more. And that's films 37 through 35, and that's Ginger and Rosa, The Monster, and Trespass Against Us. Then we get into the category of pleasantly surprised but not necessarily blown away by. These are movies that I thought were really engaging and entertaining, that had good performances, but there was something keeping me from loving it. There was something holding me back from really appreciating it or really finding it super captivating and enthralling, but that was good enough that I would probably watch again. And that's films 34 through 30, and that's Locke, The Captive, Remember, and De Palma. So next up, 29 through 21 are going to be films that I think are worth your time, that are better than average, that aren't necessarily perfect films to me, but that are films that I think in A24's catalog are 100% worth your time watching. And those are The Rover, Slow West, Laggies, A Most Violent Year, Obvious Child, Equals, While We're Young, Mississippi Grind, and Green Room. And those are all the movies that I feel like are above average, that are really entertaining and engaging, that are really well made, and I 100% think any and all of those movies are worth your time. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit now. We're into top 20 territory. I'll take a little bit more time talking about these movies now that we've gotten all the other ones out of the way. So coming in at number 20 is The End of the Tour. This is the movie about David Foster Wallace and reporter David Lipsky, and about him interviewing David Foster Wallace. I knew very little about him before I watched this movie, and I thought the film was incredible. I thought Jason Segel's performance was amazing. I thought Jesse Eisenberg was great. The conversations were incredibly thought-provoking. It was really well shot, and I did not expect a whole lot from this movie, but I ended up thinking that it was really incredible. Coming in at number 19 is Amy, the documentary about Amy Winehouse. I find it really interesting talking about this movie with Back to Black coming out this year, which from early trailers look horrible. I don't think the actress from the trailer looks like she did a very good job capturing Amy Winehouse, but I think this is a phenomenal documentary that captures the life of Amy Winehouse in a way that's really captivating. And even if you don't know a whole lot about her life, I feel like there's a lot you can pull away from this. Coming in at number 18 is Good Time. This is from the Safdie brothers. I found this movie to be fantastic. I think Robert Pattinson and Benny Safdie both give incredible performances in this movie. The buildup of anxiety and tension is just absolutely spectacular. I don't like it as much as Uncut Gems from what I can remember from the initial watch of Uncut Gems, but I still think the cinematography and the pacing of this film is really great. It's really a thrill ride that's worth watching. Coming in at number 17 is Lady Bird. This is the directorial debut of Greta Gerwig. I just rewatched this recently, and I thought it was fantastic. The performances were really great. I thought that it was really witty and funny, and comparatively to the first time I watched this movie, I liked it a lot more this time around and got a lot more out of it, and I talk about that a lot in detail in my full review. Coming in at number 16 is The Spectacular Now. This is really early A24, Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley. It's a really fantastic coming-of-age story that, compared to a lot of coming-of-age stories that feel really hokey and kind of overblown, this has a realism to it that's just really fantastic and easy to attach yourself onto these characters. I think you can find something, whether it's in Miles Teller's character or Shailene Woodley's character, that you're able to find within yourself, and I always think that's really important whenever you're watching a coming-of-age movie. And number 15 is the film Krisha, the directorial debut from Trey Edward Schultz. This is an anxiety-inducing nightmare about a family getting back together for Thanksgiving. The way tension is built in this movie is incredible. I cannot believe this is Trey Edward Schultz's directorial debut, and every time I revisit this movie, I grow to love it more. At number 14 is Denis Villeneuve's Enemy. I feel like this movie is really polarizing amongst Denis Villeneuve fans. I think it is an incredible psychological thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat until the very end. Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in this is spectacular, and rewatching it, I believe last year, or possibly the year before, I really enjoyed it a lot. Coming in at number 13 is Room. I think Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay are incredible in this. This is one of the most haunting and depressing films I've ever watched based on a real story, and I think the way that the director is able to kind of shift at the halfway point, because the movie becomes something very different, where it's being in this horrible situation to then shifting with living with the trauma of being in that situation. There's a very real shift in tone, and I think that it carries over really well, and for a lot of directors it probably would have been very difficult, but it feels like this director pulls it off with relative ease. Coming in at number 12 is The Black Coat's Daughter from director Oz Perkins. I adore this film. This is a very slow burn horror movie with occult things happening at a Catholic school. I love it. It's dark and depraved. The third act goes into a territory I did not expect, where it's kind of depressing. I really love it a lot. The performances here, Kiernan Shipka and Emma Roberts especially, are both incredible. It's a horror movie I recommend to anyone who digs like slow burn indie art house horror. Speaking of that, number 11, another Trey Edward Schultz film, It Comes at Night, a movie that was horribly mismarketed that I find to be incredibly compelling and disturbing. The performances in this film are amazing, especially when you look at Joel Edgerton's performance or Christopher Abbott's performance in this. Riley Keough is great in the movie while she's in it. Everyone that shows up in this movie is absolutely fantastic. I feel like the way this movie builds tension and executes the tension is really exceptional. You can feel that anxiety from Krisha carry over into this movie. And I think people wanted like a jump scare laced horror movie, and that's not what this is at all. It's very much a psychological drama where the uncertainty of who these characters are eats away at you as a viewer to see if someone's going to turn on someone else. And this time around, I loved it even more than when I saw it in the theater. Coming in at number 10 is Swiss Army Man from the Daniels, a charming and beautiful movie about how you should be able to embrace your weirdness and love yourself for your weirdness. I never thought that a movie about a farting corpse would make me cry, but here we are. I've seen this movie probably 5 or 6 times since its initial release. This could easily move its way up on my list. I think it's so incredible. Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe have amazing chemistry in this movie. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, when she shows up, is great in it. The score from one of my favorite bands, Manchester Orchestra, in this film just accompanies the movie perfectly. Andy Hall and Robert McDowell, who made the score, do a fantastic job with it. And it's just a movie that I could rewatch over and over again and never get tired of. Coming in at number 9 is the David Lowery film, A Ghost Story, a quiet, thoughtful film on loss. This is definitely an art house movie. It's a linear narrative, sort of, but there's not a lot of dialogue, and a lot of this is through visuals. But I think the way it captures the emptiness of losing a loved one and the meditation on depth and grief is just something that sticks with me more every time I watch this movie. The score to the film is absolutely brilliant. I just think it's one of the best in A24's catalog, and it only falls lower on this list because I feel like some of the stuff above it has more rewatchability, but it is still remarkable and you need to watch it at least once. Coming in at number 8 is Barry Jenkins' Moonlight, a film that I love, but I think the third act is flawed in comparison to the first two. A lot of people put this in the number 1, number 2 territory in their A24 list, and that third act is just a little bit too clunky for me to be able to put it up that high. But I do think what this movie accomplishes and what it sets out to do, it's just amazing. And I think the subject matter is so incredibly important. I think the performances of these actors who have to live one singular character through 3 very different periods of their life, it transitions really well to where it's very believable in the time jumps. It's a beautiful story about being a queer person and struggling to just exist as a queer person. And I just love this movie a lot. I'm really glad it got a lot of recognition at the Academy Awards because I think it deserves it. Coming in at number 7 is Alex Garland's Ex Machina, one of my favorite science fiction films. It has a lot of thoughtful dialogue. I think the confined space of the film is really anxiety inducing, and it does a really great job at keeping you on the edge of your seat. All the performances in this movie are great. Domhnall Gleeson, Oscar Isaac, Alicia Vikander, everyone that shows up in this movie is fantastic. It's a movie I've rewatched several times since my initial viewing, and my appreciation for it just grows. At number 6, another science fiction film I adore is Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin, a movie that I do not think is for everyone, but it is 100% for me. This is another film similar to David Lowery's A Ghost Story. There's a linear narrative here, but there's not a lot of dialogue, and it's not going to expositionally tell you what's going on. You sort of build that up in your head as you are watching the film, and I think there's something so compelling about Scarlett Johansson's performance in this. And obviously it's a film about an alien coming to Earth who at first has no heart or compassion for human beings, but seems to develop empathy over time. But the movie also says something larger about the way women and sex workers are treated, and I think that it's really incredible what Jonathan Glazer is able to say through this movie, despite it just being a really compelling science fiction film. And Mika Levy's score is one of my favorites in all of A24's catalog. At number 5 is Sean Baker's The Florida Project. This is a movie that made me cry probably harder than a lot of movies have in my life, about the poverty in Orlando, Florida, outside of Disney World, shown through the eyes of a child and through the eyes of a mother trying to take care of her child who makes a lot of mistakes. And I think what's so beautiful about this film is the way that it is able to capture the authenticity of what it is to be a parent and how difficult it can be to be a parent. And I really love that about the movie, because our lead character, she's not the most likable person, but she's also put in a situation where it's very hard to succeed. I think all of the performances in here are incredible, especially from the young actors in this movie. I'm not always a big fan of child actors, and I feel like all of them in this are very realistic and they feel like real kids. And it's just a really amazing movie that I think everybody should watch at least once. This top four is the hardest top four I've ever made. Any of these movies on any given day could interchangeably change to number one, but this is where they fall at this moment in time. Coming in at number four is The Killing of a Sacred Deer from director Yorgos Lanthimos. I adore this movie. I think it's dark and depraved and sadistic. It's Greek tragedy told in only the way Yorgos can. I love the performances in this, and what I love so much about this film is that it's really dark, but it's also really funny in moments, and you will find yourself laughing at things you probably shouldn't be laughing at, but that's what makes Yorgos such an amazing director. I think about this movie all the time, and I really loved it the last time I watched it. Coming in at number three is 20th Century Woman from director Mike Mills. This is a film that every time I watch it, I grow to love it even more. I think it is one of the greatest movies ever made. The relationship between mother and son here is told in such a realistic way, to where the mother makes mistakes as a parent, but is also trying to grow as a parent to be a better person and a better guardian for their child in a much more understanding and compassionate way than a lot of parents are. And also just that age where you as a kid want to find yourself and you want to experience the world and you falter, and all of the people who come into your life that affect you. I love the chemistry between all of the characters in this movie. I love the choices of music. I love the way it's shot. I love all of the little intricate things that you always get from Mike Mills and all of his movies. He is one of my favorite directors. This is one of the most beautiful films ever made. Please watch it. Coming in at number two is Robert Eggers' The Witch. I have a tattoo on my arm for this movie because of how much it means to me. I cannot believe this is Robert Eggers' directorial debut and that he has made three incredible films in his catalog. Anya Taylor-Joy gives a phenomenal performance for so early in her career. I love how quiet and dreary this movie is. I love how dark and sadistic it gets in the third act. Someone making a decision to move their family because of religion, who then their religion causes them to go crazy and turn on their own family members. Just how quick with ease one little thing being said to another person can cause someone to go crazy. It's such a larger metaphor for just religion and control from larger groups in general. I love the ambiguity of the third act. I love the score to this movie. There's just so many things about it that have never left my mind. It unsettled me when I saw it the first time, and it still unsettled me 20 times later. And at number one, it's Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster, one of my favorite films of all time. It's darkly comedic and so societally poignant. Every time I rewatch it, I get something new out of it. Colin Farrell is brilliant here. I love John C. Reilly in the moments that he's in the movie. Just every actor and actress in this gives so much to the overall film. The cinematography is breathtaking. I feel like Lanthimos is the closest we'll ever get to a modern day Kubrick. I said that in my Killing of a Sacred Deer review, and that still remains true throughout his entire career. He is one of the most exciting directors working in the industry, and I will always support him no matter what he makes. So that is my ranking of the first 60 films in A24's catalog. What are some of your favorite films at this point in A24's catalog? Obviously, I've got a long way to go, a lot more movies to watch, and ranking their entire catalog, but I had a lot of fun doing this today. As always, if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.